everyone, and welcome to Real Life Talks. I'm Yvonne Heath, your host and the founder of the I Just Showed Up movement. So joining me today, I'm so excited to have Bro Perkins. Hello, Bro.
Hi, Yvonne. Nice to be here.
It is so wonderful to meet you in person, and we have so much to talk about. I have to look at the time because I don't even know where to start. But I will tell you some of the things that you don't know. So our producer, actually, because you also now have a Rogers show, but we'll touch on that. I asked her, I said, do you think should be on the show? I'd like some guests on the show. And she said, Bro Perkins, he's a psychic medium. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't really know much about that. And it's not really, I'm trying to get people to live well, grieve well, die well. I don't think
Of course, I know nothing about any of those things.
Right, of course. But I thought, I don't know that I want to dive into that. And she sent me an email and said, I talked to Bro, he's in. And I thought, no, wait a minute. I'm not sure about this. Truly, not even so much skeptical, just I didn't really know much about it. But then we had a conversation, and it was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And then a reading. Mm-hmm. But the first thing you said to me, do you remember what you said? I feel like...
I have trouble remembering things that I get when I'm in that kind of state doing a reading. I think our first conversation I tapped into a grandmother of yours in particular.
Exactly. And you said to me, do you have a grandmother, an elder with the maybe initials AN, something like that? And I thought, and it's funny because I was like, no, Bro, it's like AL because it's Alin. And you're like, Alin, AN, okay, well that is interesting. Right.
I'm not the best with names, but I'm not the worst. I always say we go with initials and then the phonetics. It's also a 2-syllable name.
And truly, but you were really bang on because it was A-N, Alin, there it was, right? So you were right. And then we had we did a reading, and you were actually willing to do a reading on the show today. And I thought, if he doesn't get everything right, I don't want to embarrass him on TV, which, joke's on me because we had...
I already embarrass myself on TV all the time.
Me too. That's not a problem. But I just thought, I don't know how it would go. And again, because I didn't know anything about it. So we spoke for over an hour.
Yeah.
And you see this? Yeah. These are my notes that I took from our conversation because I was really, truly blown away by everything. And you were so incredibly insightful, and so much of what you said just, it just touched my heart. And I walked away from our conversation feeling very peaceful, which I didn't know how I was going to feel. And so I really loved it, which was also a surprise.
Yeah, well, there's a motto that I have for my work. After about 18 years of this, I've whittled it down to this idea that what we do is we undo your past in the present, setting your future free. So a lot of what people don't expect with a real reading is we'll dive into things that are true about you already. People sometimes think I'm like a fortune cookie machine and I'm just drawing out future predictions, which is useless. You can't do anything about your future, but some of a reading does involve the future. I'd say maybe approximately 15% on the high end. Okay. A lot of readings could be 5 to 10% the future, but the rest is dealing with what you've been going through. And of course, if you're grieving the loss of a loved one as well, receiving messages from them can cause you to accelerate in your grief process. And I think from our chat, that's where we intersect, because you being a nurse and a counselor with people, I think, and your whole motto about showing up for life and dealing with grief and learning about what it is before it blindsides you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think there's some people are sort of afraid of this and feel like maybe, we shouldn't tap into this, which it's interesting because when people think, we shouldn't interfere with life, grief, or death, or afterlife, well, we do it all the time with medical technology, let's be honest. But my feeling is that any tool that will help you to live well, grieve well, and die well is a useful tool. What do you say to that?
Definitely. That's the thing about my work is that since I was 15 years old, I'm approaching 40 now, but at that time, I started to sit with people twice my age and deal with people going through divorce, or people, my friends are skateboarding outside having their first kiss, and I'm dealing with someone who's going through a divorce at 46.
Right.
And people who have lost a loved one, and then I would later in my 20s lose my mother quite young.
Yes.
So absolutely. I mean, what I've learned from my work myself is that life, you know, you get deeper and you get more in touch with the things that make life good when you go through these struggles. You know, it's the people who've never had pain who are the most arrogant and materialistic and stuff, and then try losing everything and then see how that changes and transforms you.
Absolutely. But I see this now as a gift, and you are a gift, and I'm glad that you're sharing your gift, because again, anything that life can be difficult, right? Trying to navigate through this.
I'm going to send what you just said, since we have it on camera, to my ex, and just so they know. And I'm going to replay.
Yeah.
Life, you are a gift, bro.
You are a gift.
Thank you.
No, you are.
Thank you for
truly.
saying that again.
Yeah,
actually.
no, I do, because again, for you to put yourself out there, and even in reading your story, it's interesting because you said when you realized you didn't choose this, it chose you. This is just a part of who you are.
Yeah.
But you went through a great deal of maybe anxiety or depression, hard time trying to hide this, didn't you? Tell me about that.
Well, I was about 5, and my grandfather, who I had never met in life because he lived far away, he was a 7-foot-tall German man, and he started to appear to me as when I was a child. So I would tell my parents about the tall man that would visit me at night, and he would tell me things, and he would tell me to be good to my mother. And when I had trouble falling asleep, he'd cup my face, but his hand was so huge your whole head would fit in the palm.
7 feet tall, I guess.
And he used to do that to my mother when she was a baby, or when she was a little girl. So that convinced her. So my family knew that something was up before I did. And just to clarify, I mean, I don't think that going through pain and grief is the only way to become a deep person. I think this is the point of your show too, and the movement, is that you can learn from this now before it hits you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where I'm trying to take it to the next level, is like, well, hold on, people, look, like with my show, you can see other people's stories and you can get something for yourself from it too.
Yes, absolutely. So you've just started, ironic, again, the timing of this is all so ironic. So your show just started September 9th. You just aired your first series, and I watched the first show, and it was also wonderful for me to watch because you did well. First of all, the doctor that you interviewed,
Dr.
incredible.
Radin, yes.
Yes, and he talks about the science, and tell us about that, like how science is really seeing this.
Well, a lot of people don't realize science in the form that we have it is only 500 years old. And for 200 of those years, I mean, nearly half of science's lifespan has been studying mediums in laboratories. Big scientists like Sir William Crookes, who came up with 2 of the elements on the periodic table.
Wow.
He studied mediums like me in laboratories. So they hook us up. They put us in one room or sometimes a building, and our client, who we're supposed to read, is in another room or building. We can't interact with them. And they don't tell us anything about them. We don't know their gender, we don't know their name, and yet we're expected to come up with accurate information about them, at the level of which we get names, personal details that only the client would relate to, and if it's a dead loved one that they've lost, we have to identify how the person died, who they were, what their name is, things along those lines, and they're finding incredible results. I mean, in the interview with Dr. Radin, he pointed out how the American Psychological Association, which is the flagship, the biggest journal of science in America, just put a review last month of all of the psychic research in the last 100 years, and it's quite positive. So that basically means science is really finally starting to look at people like me.
Well, there's all kinds of phenomena in the world that we don't understand. It doesn't mean they don't exist.
Well,
right?
new species are being found in the rainforest every day. So it's like, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So there's a difference between a skeptic. I'm a skeptic. You know, you're a skeptic. To go into something skeptical means to think critically about it. But people who have a foregone conclusion that it's not real,
right,
and they won't look at the evidence, they call themselves skeptics, but I call them septics. And they're closed-minded.
Of course, of course. And it's okay to be skeptical, but then find out. And that's why I said, okay, I'm going to do this reading. And we did it like a video conference. And I was a little nervous, honestly, because I thought I didn't really know what to expect. But I just, I found it quite fascinating. And I think that it's a very valuable tool to give you some insight into your life, your path, and but my question to you, and I chatted with you a little bit before, is what if you see something really horrible?
Horrific, yeah.
Yeah, what do you do with that? Because that's a little frightening.
That's a good question, yeah. You know, I actually have clients complain. They say, bro, you must be hiding something from me because you didn't give me any bad news. And I said, well, I just talked about your horrible divorce, your dead father, like your annoying child. What do you mean no bad news? They go, well, you made me feel so good about it. So information is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's how we use it. And I find the guides, which are entities that exist in the spirit world that work with people like me, and they essentially control the reading. They use the information in a way that's therapeutic.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's a little like when a doctor says, okay, I got to pop your shoulder back in on the count of 3, and they do it at 1 because they have to surprise you.
Sure.
It's like it's done for the purpose of healing always. And I'm not saying every psychic is like that, because for me, I always felt a calling to be spiritual and a calling to use this in a way that is the most beneficial. It's why I don't advertise. I've never put a sign. I don't have an office with a neon sign in it.
Right.
I just feel like if I'm doing a good job and if it's assisting people, they'll just send their friends. It'll just, and sure enough, you know, 20 years later.
Well, and that's incredible. And I do feel that, and I could feel that in everything that you were saying, was that this was actually something beneficial. And it doesn't always mean everything we're talking about is warm and fuzzy, right? We talked about some other things as well. But I could tell that you actually cared and that you wanted this to be good. Now, that doesn't mean, like you said, that every psychic or somebody claiming to be a psychic, of course there's going to be frauds out there which give this a bad name, right?
Yeah.
So how can people discern between someone who's genuine and not?
Well, first of all, real psychics don't let you tell them why you're coming. If we were to do a reading and someone were to ask me a question like, do you see me meeting the love of my life? Well, you've told me you're single, right?
Right,
or at least unhappy in your relationship.
Right.
So I don't allow questions. My clients don't tell me why they're there. What actually my procedure is that they create their questions on paper ahead of time.
Yes.
And I then do the reading, and their questions are hidden, and then they open their questions and compare it to the reading.
Yes, that's what you did with me.
Right? And how did you feel? Did you find that the reading lined up with more or less your intentions?
I felt that it was, a lot of it at first didn't make sense to me because I was talking about, you know, where we were going to go with our global movement, and we talked a lot about my 3 children at first. And I thought, okay, well, this is very good information, but then it was just like an aha moment where I thought, wait a minute, until I know that my kids we're on the right path with my children and they're on the right path for themselves, I can't carry on. Right. So I needed to have this conversation first, and that it was the peace of mind that I needed, and it was just, I don't know, I felt later after. And it was incredible.
And did the reading then after that, did it on its own veer into purpose and career?
Yes,
after?
it did.
Okay, that's important.
Absolutely.
Because my clients will find that too, is sometimes if a reading talks about something unexpected at first, which ties into kind of what you're talking about earlier, it's because actually that's the sequence of events, right? So it's like they say there's no such thing as a dumb question, but actually there is, like in the sense that people are flawed and we don't always know what's important to us.
Of course, yes.
I'll give you an example of bad news. I had it happen to me, and this is something my clients ask me never to do to them. Of course it happens to me. I had an office downtown Toronto in a Victorian mansion, and a psychic came in one day and did a reading on me. Now, I had a stalker at the time.
Oh.
I was moving apartments. I had this office. I was on television in the city, so I had a lot. This woman's gonna have a field day with me. All she could focus on is my mother, and she keeps saying, "Your mom, her heart, something about pills." My mother's fine. She had no heart problems. 2 months later, my mom's dead.
Wow.
She broke her foot, a blood clot formed, and she had a PE, a pulmonary embolus. As a nurse, you know those things are tricky little buggers.
Wow.
So not only was it unexpected, and the psychic was correct, that turned into the most important thing that year for me. So I couldn't have even known what was going to be important that year. But the psychic wasn't just a little bit right, she was extremely correct. And it actually comforted me after the fact, because the fact that such a thing could be picked up on, such a random event could be sensed ahead of time, indicated that on some level it was part of a bigger plan. That my mother's soul had decided she was going to die young, and I think partly also to teach me something. You know, like I became a lot more sympathetic to my clients who have gone through loss. I started to understand it finally from their experience.
Right.
So psychics can pick up on disasters, and it's not always clear. Like the guides will control the information. So Deborah didn't know, that's the psychic's name, she didn't know my mother was going to die of a PE, but she knew that was where the alarms were going off.
Right.
So it was enough for me to eventually understand what it meant later, but it didn't spook me in the moment. I actually just thought she was like, oh, whatever.
A kook.
Yeah.
Yes. And there would be some of them out there, right? And so like how would people know
the difference?
Yeah.
So going back to that, so they don't let you ask questions, and they don't advertise. There's no neon signs, sandwich boards. Don't go to those walk-in psychic places. They did, and along the same lines, psychic fairs and events like that, you're asking for trouble.
Is that right?
Yeah, because if you're good at what you do, you don't need to go to those things. You don't need a sign. You know, like if you're really good. Now, so the best tool for finding a good medium is through word of mouth. So if you know someone that's intelligent, that is not gullible, and a lot of my clients are officers of the law, they're doctors, I have nurses, I have all kinds of professional people. And they've had a good experience with a psychic and they can tell you what it was like, that's the one to go to. And they're hard to find.
Right. So some of these psychic fairs, I'm sure some of them are legit, aren't they? Or
well, the fair itself is not the problem, and you will find a decent psychic at a fair on occasion. You'll find the decent ones will be beginners, new psychics. And that could be any age. A beginner is not a young person. Actually, a lot of people start doing readings in their 50s.
Right. Oh, okay.
I was an oddity that I started as a teenager. But yeah, you might get lucky, but you know, you get what you pay for. Like a $15 reading is.
Sure, of course. Yes, yes. So in all this, as I mentioned to you before, this just isn't anything I've ever explored before. But since in the last 2 weeks, so we connected and you did this reading and I was blown away, which my husband Jordy, gigantic skeptic, listened to our whole hour talk, and I said, you haven't blinked for an hour, just so you know. He was floored. He thought it was incredible. You
know what I find too? Men are the easiest to please in my business because their expectation of me is so low.
Right.
That if I just even do a little bit good, but the women are like, yeah, I've had that. People know that I have kids, you know, obviously.
Right, yeah.
The women expect more of me.
Yeah,
so.
No, you got him, which is huge. But also I was invited a few months ago to speak at the Spiritualist Church.
Wow.
In Bracebridge. I didn't know anything about it, so I said, I should Google this before I go and do my talk. Lo and behold,
Den of Lions.
They have psychic mediums there.
That's my hometown, yeah.
Okay, and here's the other thing. A gentleman who died a few years ago, and I supported the family, haven't talked to the son in probably 2 years. Sent me a message yesterday saying, I just had to share this with you, that I am seeing blue orbs. He sent 3 pictures with glowing lights, and he sent this thing, blue orbs, saying that someone who has died, who loved you, is staying connected with you, and he sent all these pictures.
Wow.
That was either yesterday or the day before, and I'm like, okay, bro, okay, I got it, I believe you now. Okay, I've got it. All these
synchronicities happening.
Synchronicities, but you know what I just say to people? Choose to believe. Even like if we don't have the proof, and how wonderful for this man to feel so connected to his father.
Right.
Why do we have to disprove it? Why do we have to, if you know, this is And life, grief, and death and people dying is one of the greatest pains we go through. To know or to feel that we can stay connected, isn't that one of the most extraordinary gifts?
Oh, it is. It can accelerate the healing process for sure.
Absolutely.
And it can put an emphasis on a new relationship that when you lose someone, it's not over. It's just maybe a new form, a spiritual relationship, if you will.
Yes,
you know?
and I think that it's worth, again, if people want to suffer less in life, grief, and death, start to explore these things. Just be skeptical, absolutely, but at least maybe entertain the idea. And, you know, it's not all voodoo and whatever. Science is very interested in this, right?
Well, and science is a philosophy of evidence and proof and empiricism, which means to like only look at factual evidence. And so, you know, if science is saying that there's something to this, then the average public should take a look. And the thing is, there's a lot of things science says that the public doesn't find out about until a media outlet presents it to them on a silver platter, because who goes reading journals and keeping up with obscure scientific discoveries?
Right.
You'd have to be a scientist to do that. So what I'm trying to do with my show is present the stuff the scientists are doing to the general public, because they don't have a platform for that.
Yes.
These scientists are so busy doing the science, they don't think to do a podcast or something. So.
Of course, yes. Well, I'm glad. So on your show, and it's called ARC. What is ARC?
ARC is like Cher or Bono. It means nothing and everything at the same time.
Okay.
But really the secret acronym is Afterlife Research Center.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is, as I say, I do half the show as an interview with an expert, and sometimes celebrities will be in the future. And then the other half is me doing a reading on a person from the area. So Barrie, Aurelia, all these areas I do clients there.
And when you do a reading with someone, you haven't had a conversation with them before. What information do you have usually?
Well, you and I share a producer. Our producer Deanne, and
she's so cute, isn't
she's
she?
adorable,
Yes.
and she's a vegan, and I can't feed her because I never have vegan food in my house. So
duly noted, I am too.
Perfect. So I'll never invite you guys over.
Deanne.
But the thing is, she won't let me know anything about my clients, which is how I like it, because I don't let my clients tell me anything. But she's that extra shield, that buffer, and we do something different with our show. We don't edit the readings. We don't edit them to the best parts. We show the good, the bad, the ugly. If something doesn't make sense, we're honest about it. If I read someone and they think I'm crazy, we'll interview them a year later and find out what came true or what didn't. You know, it's a great experiment.
I think that's fantastic.
It's not an entertainment show.
Right.
It's a docudrama, so it's a documentary, but it's got the drama of doing readings as well. So it's kind of a new concept.
Right. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. Now, do you ever get exhausted completely? Like everybody that you talk to, have a conversation with, can you shut it off sometimes so you could just hang out with your friends?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I like to do, because of my work, you know, my friends often say, bro, why don't you come out and stuff? It's like, but my work is so social that I get that fix in the day. And then I really value my me time. So I've got my 2 little cats, and I live in a house with my sister upstairs, so I have enough family time. I lived in the city for 10 years by myself. So I certainly have found the balance between work and play in my life, which was hard as a psychic. And this, for any young people who might be psychics out there, you know, when you start to develop this and use it, you'll find that a lot of people want to be your friend, but they really want you to be a psychic to them. And they don't know that. It's a weird relationship because we don't have this in society yet. Psychics aren't an established thing. So it's like you're going to attract a lot of people who are in need of help. And I used to think they were my friends.
Right.
So I just decided to volunteer instead at a soup kitchen, or in my case, a hospice.
Right.
And then I'm really selective with who my friends are.
Yes.
My friends forget I'm psychic.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, so that kind of brings me to something that maybe we could share. Kids or teens or adults who suddenly can no longer ignore the fact that they are psychic. Is there somewhere like they can turn to psychic hotline for help because that would be very isolating, suddenly realizing, oh my goodness, you know, I hear voices, and where could they, is there somewhere they could turn to connect? No.
Nowhere. But so I actually was 12 years old and going through all this and watching psychics appear on television in the 90s, the late 80s and early 90s. And that helped me. That helped me wake up. So part of why I'm doing this is to, you know, provide some source of a mirror, some source of an identifier for people. But I will be looking into in the future creating something.
I think that, because I think in anything, peer support is so important, and it's very isolating. You know, like when I started, hey everybody, I want to empower people with grief, death, and dying. Do you know how many people ran the other way? And now on September 21st, I'm going to the Death Symposium.
Wow.
In
Fantastic.
Toronto. It's actually called, they're using the word Death Symposium. But, you know, I feel like these people with this gift, instead of just feeling alone, isolated, and I'm kind of weird, wouldn't it be nice for them to be able to connect with someone?
And it's like we brought up with psychic fairs and stuff. I mean, it's like we're a carnival act. I mean, so it's more like I am repulsed by things like that. I don't want to be seen as weird. I mean, I'm weird enough as is.
Sure, I'm weird too.
I don't need to add to it. I don't need to belong to the carnival. So it's
well, I mean, if that works for some people, great. But yeah,
I argue it doesn't.
Thing.
I argue it doesn't work for anybody.
Okay.
They may think it does, but...
Or maybe it's just for entertainment, I guess.
Well, but also the types of things you get into at those places don't really deal with the core issues.
Right.
A crystal won't fix you.
Sure.
Although they're beautiful and thoughts, they can encourage you to have certain thoughts that could lead to breakthroughs.
Right.
But it's like too many people put the emphasis on the material and not on the inner work. And that's the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we've already run out of time, and I believe that we could have a very long conversation continued. But I do thank you for your work, and I'm so excited that your show will be has started. ARC, watch out for it on Rogers TV, right? They'll be able to find it. So. Thanks again, bro. You've opened my mind a little bit, and
thank you.
I might have to come visit you again.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks so much. So thanks for joining us today. Real Life Talks is about learning how to just show up for yourself and for others, and sometimes having difficult conversations or just talking about things we don't normally talk about. So if you want to be able to just show up, you want to be empowered and resilient, my call to action, as always, is plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thanks. Bye for now.